That's
not
really nice.
it's not a canned sound coming out of like an app.
That's a good idea.
I've tried those sound machines, like coffee shop sound, like background noise, white noise, to help me write. Yeah, because I used to write in coffee shops, and now I can't go. So I play those sounds to see how I feel.
Wow, what effect does it have?
I feel like since I did it myself, I know what's happening, and that's I think that affects me a little bit. The whole metacognition is that it's not working for me here. So, but I think if I didn't know it was just in the background, it could help me get into the flow.
Wow, that's interesting. I actually find the noise in the background a little bit distracting for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I prefer it to be quiet. I know there's lots of like variability and heterogeneity around this. I know that I've read somewhere Malcolm Gladwell loves to work in coffee shops. He just goes there, he finds it stimulating to once in a while look at other people, do what they're doing, and then get back to what they're doing and so on.
Yeah.
Farhad says hello. Hi, Farhad. Hello, Vidya. There's Maria. There's Anna, Ravi, lots of people. Wonderful. We are live, guys. And I don't know if you noticed, if you've been there for the previous sessions, I've changed the angle a little bit. This was based off of advice from a very well-meaning person who shall go unnamed, who said that, you shouldn't have the camera angle from down below because you can see people's double chin, apparently. Okay. And I didn't realize it. So I had the camera down and now I've propped it up. And I'm also wearing my glasses because the laptop is a little bit farther away from me. So I can't see quite well when it's far away. Anyway, welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining us for Happy, what is it called?
Happy Hour. HappySmarts Happy Hour. Yay!
All right. Do you guys have your favorite beverage with you? That's the question.
Yeah, I have lime water.
I have one too.
You have one too? All right. So mine's the fanciest. No, actually, Mel's is quite fancy. What is it?
I know, it's lime water.
Lime water. Wow. In a big, like one of those, I don't know. What are we called?
Very healthy.
She's very healthy. All of us are healthy, right?
Yes.
Suchi, let's dive in, okay? So talking about health, right? Okay. So let me just kind of back up a little bit. Again, welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. And there are people from all around the world. I can see already that there's people from Bangladesh, from Goa, and from Mexico. All right. So please do tell us where you're from, because we're always curious to see where people are coming from. And let me just dive in with this question about health. Okay, Suchi. Okay, this is not on our list of questions. All right, so this is you're going to have to think on your feet.
Okay, can I ask a question? Am I allowed to ask questions that are not on the list of questions?
I think so.
Of course.
I think that will be fun, actually.
I'll do my best here, Mal.
Okay.
I
didn't participate as much. Okay, go ahead, Raj.
All right. Yeah. So my question was, Suchi, how important is it to eat well, exercise, lead a healthy lifestyle for you to be able to achieve goals?
So it's interesting. You're thinking about connection between health and overall goals. I have to come from my personal experience. I think it helps me a lot. So I think it helps, of course, from different dimensions. We all know healthy body is important. If we're sick, we're not feeling comfortable. If we're constantly just having headache, shoulder pain, probably can't perform to your kind of utmost ability. So that part is important to feel like you're, in your own body and you are happy with your body. So I think that is important. I think it also helps with brain kind of functionality. I think when I'm healthy, I'm eating healthy, I feel less foggy. So I think for somebody who has to write and teach, that helps me a lot. And I think above that, just building healthy pattern, a healthy behavior is kind of related to what we're going to be talking about today. It's part of training myself to regulate. Like I have to say no to some temptations, I have to follow a bigger goal, which is a health goal. And I think just that practice itself is helpful. So we learn how to say no to some temptations, even for doing little things in our lives, and help us discipline and hopefully create a more meaningful life for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So leading a healthy lifestyle makes you more disciplined, and that discipline is a generally applicable muscle that can be exercised in other domains as well.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so let's jump into a question that we had on our list. What is the biggest misconception about goals?
Yeah, so I think the biggest misconception is that we tend to think setting a goal or working on a goal is something somewhat static. So in the sense that I have a goal, I want to lose this amount of weight, and I just find a way to do it. For instance, I'm gonna cut off some food, or I'm gonna start exercising, and that's it. It's as if once I have a plan, all I have to do is I'll just do it, right? And then I'll achieve my goal. So we think about it as very straightforward. All I need to do is just to plan it, and it will just start, and I'm gonna finish. But what we found repeatedly in our research, that it is actually a very dynamic process. I think we can all resonate with that. I may have a plan and the next day it rains, or I can't go jogging. I have to find a different way to work on this goal so I won't give up. There might be moments we feel like we're doing great on this goal. There might be moments we feel like we're not making progress. What am I supposed to do? There are moments maybe we feel like we wish there are other people sharing this habit with me, we can jog together. There might be moments where I feel like I just want to be left alone. I want to do it myself. So how do we manage that? And so I think missing this, missing this dynamic aspect of goal is why a lot of times we fail. We start off with a lot of energy. We thought we have the plan. Once we have some setback or things don't go as well as we plan, then we are not sure what to do. So I think understanding the fact that it's dynamic, and once you have a goal, you're just starting this journey. There are a lot of things you have to tailor and change along the way before you get there. Just knowing that, I think, is important.
All right, that's great. So I have a follow-up question. Mel, you were about to ask something. Do you mind if I go? Or you want to?
No, go ahead.
Okay, I'll go. So my question to you, follow-up question, Suchi, is that seems to me mean that we need to have a plan B, plan C, plan D kind of a thing, right? And not just that, okay, I have this plan to lose this weight and everything is going to work out this perfectly. And then at the end of the month, if I lose, X amount of weight every single week, then I'll be at my goal at the end of the month. Rather, it's going to be that, well, there's going to be like days in which I'm not going to feel as motivated, right? There's going to be days in which, like you said, I might, part of my regimen might be going for a run, and it might rain, or might be too cold or too hot, or whatever. So I need to have a contingency plan, right? And even kind of be aware that some of these contingencies I might not be able to predict even, right?
Exactly. So there's some research on that. Like, it's really important to kind of practice this if-then connection. So if this happened, then I'm gonna do this. So that should be part of the plan. If it rains, I'm gonna do this. If kids distract me for 3 hours and I can't do my original plan to work out, to even go to the gym, I'm gonna do this at home. So kind of building that if-then plan is gonna be important. And also, I think another thing is, what kind of plan are we talking about? A lot of times we have this real unrealistic optimism. We have all these plans. I'm just gonna cut off carb, and that's what I'm gonna do. We kind of forget our personal history of what we're used to eating. The fact that every time I try to cut something off, it just backfires on me. So we kind of just have this unrealistic optimism. So I think what kind of plan we actually put in place is important. And one thing that we discover is that, especially when people are starting to work on a goal, which happens a lot right now with the pandemic, people are setting different goals for their health or for work. When we are starting, it's really important to start small, to start with something we feel we can make progress on. So out of all the plans you can have, instead of aiming high, I'm gonna work out in the gym for 2 hours, I'm gonna cut off 500 calories, start with something small you feel like you really can just make progress on. It could just be, I'm gonna just walk for 15 minutes, or I'm gonna add a plate of vegetables, something small you can do every day. That is really important to get that momentum going. So also, what kind of plan is important?
Can I ask a question or make an observation? It also seems to me that when we're looking at plans that are like, go to the gym for 2 hours or only 500 calories, that there's a punitive characteristic to that, where it's almost like you're punishing yourself. Like, you'll starve and you'll work so hard every day, and it feels mean. And I wonder if there is anything to bringing kindness to yourself in your plans. Like,
Definitely, because when we are thinking about plans, that's another thing. We actually have an ongoing project that look at this. We gravitate towards the plans that are intense, and like Mel said, a lot of times it's punishing. It's like if a diet cuts off a lot of things, it's very drastic. Usually, it gets even more attention. We like that because it sounds like it's going to be a very productive plan. So we gravitate towards things that are really difficult to execute, actually, in the long run, and it's difficult because it's painful to do, because you cut off so many different things. You have to do drastic changes. So what Mel bring up is important. As we think about plans, it's about what is doable for us, what is the small things, and there's some kindness to it. We found that a lot of people who are really good at self-regulating, they have created ways to see those things, those plans, as rewards. People, you heard people like saying that if I don't go to the gym, I feel actually very painful. Going to the gym is what gives me happiness, make me feel fun. So they find rewards and fun in their plans. And I think that is important. That's also part of kind of starting small. Don't try to punish yourself with something really drastic and hard to do. Start with something that's easy to do. You can find some joy from it, but you also know that it's going to help you with this long-term goal.
Wonderful. One quick comment I want to make to the audience is that I see some questions are coming in. I would ask you guys to hold off on those questions until the latter half of this session, because otherwise we're going to have to scroll back and look at your questions and we might miss it. Not for any other reason than that it was up above. Okay, so be some kind of a recency effect. So hold off on the questions, write it down or keep it in the back of your head. And then when I open it up for general audience questions, that would be the most appropriate time to ask your questions. Okay. All right. So let's go back to this. This is wonderful, Suchi. It's a very, very useful tip, I think. It isn't maybe as psychologically satisfying to aim for, every day I'm just going to floss my teeth, right? Or every day I'm just going to, as soon as I wake up or, sometime in the first hour, I'm going to do 10 sit-ups or 10 squats, some small thing like that. And then once you kind of are confident that you can pull it off, right? Then you can kind of add on to it.
Exactly.
Right? So Mel, you were talking actually, I'm reminded, you were mentioning when I was at your place maybe 3 months back or something, you were talking about something called habit stacking.
Habit stacking.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And maybe there's some research on it. We can ask Suchi because she's the goals expert. But why don't you explain what habit stacking is, Mel?
Sure. So when you want to create a new habit, one of the best ways to do it is to stack it onto an already super existing habit. So for example, if you wake up every day and brush your teeth, for sure, or you wake up every day and drink coffee, for sure, then the new habit you want to create, you add it on the back of that drinking coffee. And that that apparently helps with success. So that's the theory.
Is there anything on that, Sushi? So, for example, if I want to take, I don't know, fish oil supplements every day, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not yet a habit, and I often forget it. I do know that I make coffee every day, and I drink coffee, and I just put that fish oil supplement next to the coffee so that it's a reminder, So I definitely drink coffee, and now the fish oil is next to it. I pad it up, and so it becomes a habit after some time.
Definitely. I think there's a power of associations. What you're doing is you're using your actual behavior to build associations. Every day I do this. It might be originally for some goal. Now I already forget about it. It's part of my habit. If I can tag another behavior, it's like I'm rewriting that tape to add another behavior. So when morning comes, these are the two things I now do. So that's definitely a very smart way to do this. And it would be really great if they actually tie in towards the same thing. So it's physical health in this case, or just your morning joy, your productivity, preparation. So I think that would be really nice way to introduce something. And again, it's because that is not disruptive. You're not adding something that's you're going to be kind of dreadful to do every morning and ruining your whole morning. You're adding something that kind of smooth. You can just tag along without thinking much or feeling like you're working a lot just to do this.
I love that.
So we shouldn't really be adding drinking wine. Oh, this is orange juice, actually. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 10 a.m. your time, Raj.
Yeah. So, the way that I convince myself that it's okay to have wine even at 10 a.m. Is through this kind of cliched saying that it's 5 p.m. somewhere. Originally I'm from India, don't forget. Okay. So you can get the Indian out of India, but you can't get India out of the Indian. All right. Excuses. But this is in fact just orange juice, guys. Okay, as you can see. All right. And here, please get your favorite beverage. This is HappyHour with HappySmarts HappyHour. I keep forgetting, what's the order of HappySmarts and HappyHour. Hey, one thing that I wanted to tell you, Suchi, when you were talking about all this, I don't know if you've come across this book called The Happiness Project by Gretchen Rubin. Basically, what she talks about is, here are 12 things that emerge from the happiness research. Okay, like for example, that make your bed every day, listen to your favorite songs, okay, things like that are kind of, mood boosters. And every month, I'm going to pick one particular habit or one particular thing that emerges from the research, and I'm just going to do that one thing. And these are small things, okay? These are not huge things, like making your bed every morning, right? I'm going to do it for the whole month, and then for the next month, I'm going to add the second habit on top of that habit. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a kind of long, drawn-out happiness stacking, if you will. Okay.
Happiness stacking.
Yeah, one after the other, and by the end of the 12 months, you've got 12 new habits, each of them like small things, not demanding a lot of effort or time or whatever. And then by the end of the 12 months, though, you have like 12 of the small things that together make up a significant, like it significantly boosts your happiness levels, basically. What do you guys think of that idea?
I love it, and it sounds, there's something that I practiced more in it's like a micro version of that, where you use happy stack in the morning, including really upbeat songs, 20 jumping jacks, things that just think of memories that bring a smile to your face. And the idea on the micro level is that you create a momentum of good feelings. And when you can direct your energy in a positive or negative way for about 17 seconds, it starts to gather momentum. I think is the science behind that. So the more things you can put in a row in a small way in the morning, the more likely you are to carry that momentum into the day. So yeah, it's occurring to me like a macro view of that micro, and I'm wondering like, wow, if we did them both.
Yeah, why not, right? There's research showing that if you work out in the mornings for even 20 minutes, moderate workout, it kind of makes the rest of the day go better because you're in a better mood.
Have the energy throughout, yeah. I like that stacking too. I think that really is kind of exactly what we are saying, is that you make something mild and you come adding onto it instead of trying to do 12 things at once and make your day, your first month really intense. And most of us can do that, but then we stop doing it the second month, then you lose everything. So instead of doing that, it's important to kind of plan it out. So every month there's not too much to do. Another thing I think we found that could be helpful is a lot of times I think in this society these days we tend to think about goals as destinations. So if I reach it, I'm done. So if I lose my weight, I'm done. I'm gonna wash my hands there. And as we all know that a lot of times it comes down to maintenance. You're happy today doesn't mean next month you'll still be just as happy. Same thing with our career, same thing with health for sure. We actually need to continue doing those things. So relationship is another one. Yeah, it's not just about getting married and that's it. So there's a lot of maintenance, probably even more so in the maintenance.
That's the beginning.
Yeah, so we felt that it's important to switch the mindset. And I think what you're just saying, that building habit, one habit a month and do it for 12 months, it's really speaking to this mindset of the journey. It's not just about checking off my list and reaching my destination. It's about thinking about it as a journey. Every month, even though I just do one thing, just reflecting back the fact that I make it part of the habit. I'm already on this journey and this process will keep on going. Who knows what the 13th month will be like? That's another exciting journey. So in some way, I think that is a really nice way to think about our maintenance behaviors. That just because we achieve something doesn't mean that's the end of it. We're kind of now doing it for its own sake. We're enjoying it, finding fun, like what Mel said earlier, finding value in the fact that we're doing it and keep on doing it as this is a journey gonna be with us our whole life and not just about reaching something immediate.
There's something a little bit, I don't know, negative about that. It's like, it seems nice to feel like I've arrived and now I can just chill out. I can just relax. I can lay down and that's it. I'm done, right? But this idea that it's a journey and it's never over and you have to keep doing it, seems like, what's the point? If I have to keep doing it, it seems like work, right?
Yeah, that's probably because we haven't found an actual personal reason or intrinsic reason for doing it. I think that's the thing. If we think about it as a punishment, then it's gonna be a very long punishment. But if you think about it, actually I get so much joy from it. Like what Mel said, add to my happiness. I'm choosing the specific ways to change my diet that actually I can get used to. I enjoy it. So I think that is the important part. Otherwise, yeah, it will sound like a prolonged punishment rather than something that gives us joy.
That kind of reminds me of this metaphor that Tal Ben-Shahar, who used to teach a class on happiness at Harvard, used to use. He talked about these two dimensions of, in the context of food, healthiness and then tastiness, right? Things that are not healthy, not tasty, no one's going to eat. So let's forget that quadrant. The interesting quadrants are where it's healthy but not tasty and tasty but not healthy. And in general, we tend to kind of gravitate towards things that are tasty and not healthy for obvious reasons. It's just kind of pleasurable. And what he said is that corner on the top right of healthy and tasty, right? Kind of let's focus on that and expand that out.
Yes.
And if you can move things that are healthy for you and right now you don't find to be that tasty into somehow learning whatever it takes to make it in your subjective experience more tasty. Okay, and I can talk about a couple of things that, so let's kind of move away from food here in the context of work, for example, right? I mean, if you have to write a paper and every 20, 25 minutes of working on a paper, you give yourself a little bit of a treat, right? Maybe you get to listen to your favorite song or, you kind of eat something that's hopefully healthy, but it's a snack that you like, things like that. So you're pairing up things that are somewhat aversive, that don't give you as much of a dopamine rush, so to speak, with things that do that. And then over time, your subconscious mind kind of classically conditioned to associate that somewhat more meaningful but not as pleasurable activity with positivity, right?
Definitely. I think tying small rewards to things is important. And I think another part of it is like a lot of times when I'm writing a long paper, right, it is really big and that we talk about starting small. So it's important for me to kind of dissect it. I'm just going to write one page. And if I write one page, that's really good. I should celebrate it, celebrate this little milestone before I start another page. So I think it is important. The reward may not even be something concrete, but just give myself that encouragement that, hey, that was one page. That was amazing. And so I think that is important. Reflecting on the small things that we did do for that big project is important, instead of hating myself that, oh, I haven't done that 90% of the paper. So I think that is something that's important, especially in the beginning, because in the beginning, so much uncertainty, it's so easy to give up. We need to start small. We need to celebrate small achievements so we keep that momentum going.
Right.
I think that's so important personally, and I've seen it in myself, and I've seen it in personal relationships I have. I see it especially in like high achievers, that the achievement, it's just never worth celebrating. There's always another one. We have to get to $1 million, or like, some success metrics like that. And it's I don't know, I guess what is coming up for me is that it almost brings me pain to watch people not celebrate, because it's like, when will you stop and let yourself have it, let yourself feel it? Because I feel like we can always do that, like on a daily, right? There's always something where we can go, wow, I have it. Yeah.
Good. Mel, if anybody accuses Mel of anything, the one thing they can't accuse her of is not celebrating. Right, Mel?
I love that. Yeah, I love a good party. Invite me.
Right. Which reminds me, on Monday evening, you have this session on resilience. I sent out an email about it to you guys. Take a look at it, and please do join Mel. And she's looking for volunteers. Okay. You call them something else, though. Is volunteers the right term for?
No. It's free. This resilience training is free for frontline workers.
Frontline workers. Frontline workers are not volunteers.
No, they're people who are putting, they're at higher risk, like people who are stuck in grocery stores, nurses, doctors. They're on the front lines of this virus. And so we want to give them resilience training.
Sorry, I misspoke, guys. Okay, not volunteers, frontline workers. Okay. Yep. All right. So let's continue on with this. And one of the more kind of recent pieces you're working on, Suchi, that just got published, was the difference between the journey metaphor, and you mentioned it sometime back, versus the destination metaphor. And I do want to get back to that. But before that, the earlier piece that you were working on, that you actually came to UT to present. And by the way, Suchi is a graduate from the Macomb School of Business. Makes me very proud.
Longhorn.
Yeah, Longhorn. I was the PhD advisor when she joined our program.
Yes.
So I feel like
Rod's seminar was the best, still the best to this day. I remember everything he taught us.
Right. So I hope my PhD students are watching this right now. Okay. All right. So here's my question to you, Suchi. This was on the paper that you presented on how we often have the tendency to kind of compare ourselves to other people, how well they're doing versus how we are doing. And sometimes it can kind of be motivating to see that they're ahead of us, right? And feel that sense of insecurity, perhaps, and want to compete with them and so on. What do you find in that research about what is the pros and cons of comparing yourself to other people?
Yeah, that's so important, especially to this day. We talk about kind of social connections. So I think from that is actually a line of multiple projects. We look at social dynamics when we are working on goals together. So you can think about like very typical organizations like Weight Watchers. There are a lot of companies that connect people because they have similar weight loss goals. Or similarly, you wear Fitbit, Apple Watch, you see progress information about other people. So a lot of times we are now pursuing our goals in the social space. We're not doing this alone. We can get progress feedback about how other people are doing it, how much weight they have lost, or what are they doing today for their goal. So we're looking at in what situation that could be productive and in what situation that could actually backfire. So it's interesting that one big takeaway I have is that it is important to be socially connected, and probably even more so during this time. It is important to know that there are other people working on similar things as us, and to share tips to help each other. Because like we say, how do we know what are the contingency plans? We can learn from others' experience. What has happened to them? What were their backup plans? I think those things are very important. So information exchange is important, and staying connected is important. But we found that people tend to do that more in the beginning when they're starting something something and they are not sure. We see that in both dieters, in students, when they first join schools, there are a lot of social events. They want to be connected because there's so much uncertainty. They have so many questions, so they feel they learn a lot from each other. But as time goes on, you would think friendships should deepen. They should know each other even more. We start to see some psychological distancing where people kind of withhold information. If they heard about something that helped them learn, they may feel like they don't necessarily need to share that to help other people learn. So we say that they basically start to become a little bit competitive. Even the goal itself doesn't need to, it wasn't a competition. So we can all lose 5 pounds of weight. It's not really a competition, but we start to see dieters like bring snacks to meetings and they themselves aren't eating, but other people are eating. So they kind of suggest that they are trying to compare, they are trying to potentially put other people down a little bit to make that to create a feeling they are making progress. And
that doesn't happen. By the way, that doesn't happen among the people here in this session. Okay, we are all like,
no, you win, I win.
And it's important because it backfires. So we see that when people do that, when you do something to kind of create this illusion of progress because you put other people down and because you think about it as a competition. So now you're ahead without even doing anything. We found that they're more likely to then also grab a snack themselves later on or skip the gym because they feel they are ahead. So they actually end up regressing on their own goals. So it's actually not good for themselves either. So it is important, we think, that to stay connected and continue helping each other, even though inherently there are moments maybe we feel that it is a comparison and we may feel like we're winning or we're losing. We need to kind of remind ourselves that, no, this is not a competition. We're all just doing this for our individual value, and we should keep on helping with each other because there's always so much we can learn every stage. So I think that is, at least to me, also an important finding for my own kind of thinking about career management, thinking about my relationship with others, my co-authors or colleagues, how I stay connected with them and share my learning with them and get their learning so we can all grow together instead of thinking that I need to be the only one ahead and everybody needs to be behind just so that I can be happy. That is not really a healthy mindset there.
I resonate with this so hard because I'm so competitive. And I don't necessarily want to be anymore because I get the science of it. And so now when I notice that I'm with someone and I'm like, I get that feeling, I'm actively being conscious of it and working to transform it. And Raj, this actually matches to something you talk about where there's an abundance mindset or a lacking mindset. And I think when I'm in the essence of being in competition with someone or anyone it's like there's only one pie and there's only so many pieces in the pie. So if they have it, I can't have it. When in this weight loss example, that's ridiculous, right? Because we all have whole, complete bodies that can gain or lose as much as we want. So the practice I've developed to overcome that, in case anyone watching is also a little bit naturally competitive, is to go in the mindset that when they win, I'm winning because I'm believing in this oneness of all. And when they are having more joy, the world has more joy. So I have more access to joy. And also when someone is like light years ahead of me, instead of looking at it like I'm so far behind, I look at it like, wow, you're such a good example of what's possible.
Exactly.
And there's one more piece of science here, which is like, I forget the term, but you know, when someone breaks a world record or an Olympic world record, then the next year, the next person, of course, can break it and go farther and go farther. So other people having great success makes it more possible for us to have great success if that continues to follow.
Definitely, yeah. We can all reflect in their glory. I think that's the important part, and then know that now that's possible. We can step on their stepping stones and then move forward. So I think that I love what you shared. Definitely, I think it's a mindset we have to remind ourselves of because we are hardwired to compare. That's how we calibrate during the evolutionary process. Like, it was part of the survival mechanism, but sometimes we do it way too much, and the society kind of facilitate that also a lot. And so it's important to dial back and remind ourselves of the fact that we are all just together because it's really possible to have win-win. We can all just win on our own health goals or success goals or happiness goals.
Yeah. So the one thing that I find useful in this context to think about and realize is that there are contexts in which it's perhaps good to be competitive, right? I mean, if there's only so much food and not everybody can have it, it's a war-struck zone. Even in that context, it'd be awesome if you were altruistic like Jesus Christ or whatever, that kind of a figure. And
you're not, Raj?
What?
You're not like that? I thought you were.
I don't know. I've not been in that kind of situation for a long time, So, but I'm happy that I'm at least able to be abundance-minded, given what's happening in my life. I think I'm relatively abundance-minded. I mean, obviously, the scarcity orientation kind of rears its ugly head, so to speak, right? On occasion. And like you guys, I too have a few strategies for this to deal with it. I'd actually like to hear what Suchi, what are some of your strategies? So let's say that you're in a situation and there's kind of either explicitly or implicitly, there's a comparison between you and somebody else, and they just happen to be a little bit ahead on whatever the goal is. It's a relevant goal for you, let's say. Okay, let's say you wanted to lose weight, right? Things like that. Now that you know your research, okay, maybe you can cognitively tell yourself that the best thing, even for me, okay, not just for the other person, but even for me, is to not act in a way that's competitive, not undermine them, right? So is that the approach that you take, or are there other things that you can do, like what Mel suggested, right? If they get ahead, then they can be a source of inspiration for me, things like that. What do you do?
Yeah, I think definitely it's hard. So we notice these things that people are slightly ahead of us. Usually there are people relevant in our environment, like it could be your classmates, colleague, or people at the gym that you see frequently. Because when they're a little bit similar, relevant, that they're even more threatening. You know, like they are really what you could be, and you're not there yet. So definitely I see those moments. And I think before my own research, I naturally do a behavior, what we call social information avoidance. I avoid them. So I see them as like, all right, that is a little bit threatening. I walk the other way, or I kind of, I skip that class. I stop and then I go to other classes. You know, so we naturally want to avoid because it doesn't make us feel pleasant. So I started to, once I realized I was doing that and that is not good for my own health goals or my career goals, I started to do the opposite. I just tell myself to reach out. Like there's a person who's slightly ahead, who look just like me, maybe come from the same place. I should reach out to say hi. It's like, hey, what? No, it could be something small. I really like that you're doing this class. What did you find as helpful in this class? Just reach out. I know it doesn't seem intuitive. The intuitive thing is probably to hide and walk away. But that is an opportunity to learn, because that's the next phase that's immediately available to you. That's attainable. We're not trying to all become Einstein. That was just the next phase of intelligence or health that we can easily achieve. And those are especially threatening, but those are especially helpful. So I would kind of encourage myself to reach out, and that usually give me really helpful tips for what the next phase, the challenge it could be, and what I can do differently. And also, I think we have found that also there are things we can do, such as self-affirmation. We can remind ourselves about our uniqueness, what's different. You know, on the surface, it may all look like we're at the gym, and you could be doing more reps than me, so that sounds like a win. But if we are at the gym for different reasons, I'm here for heart health and you're here for fitness, that's different reason. There's no need to compete. So I think a lot of times reminding our own uniqueness, reminding of us of our things that make us confident, make us feel fulfilled, those are important because it gives you that confidence to then approach that person. So I think these are the two things I try to do so that I can overcome that natural tendency to just avoid and run away from competition or threat, or try too hard to compete.
It's awesome. That's so nice to hear. And this is from a professor at Stanford University, right? Who's achieved everything that's possible to achieve. And you're talking about strategies that you can use to kind of feel more of a sense of affirmation and confidence as you go about trying to achieve goals. That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, so we are at the midway point, and I think that we should start slowly entertaining questions, okay? And I'll keep an eye out for it. Manish, you have referred to an article that's available on the website, Redefining Success. I think that is is that your paper? Adopt the Journey.
I think so. I think we put it on the website for also share with the site. Yes, that is the paper we just mentioned. Thank you so much for sharing. Yes, and then there are actual visuals we use, and we're trying to kind of think about how we can use that for other contexts. For that one, we use fitness goals, academic goals. We also see athletes do that a lot, because for athletes, you think they're very competition focused, but what if you're a top athlete and you already won, you got a ring already, what else? You know, so it's important to also think about it as a journey. So there are a lot of ideas there.
All right, wonderful. So please do start typing in your questions, guys, and we will take them as we see them. In the meanwhile, I want to go on to the paper that Manish has listed there, and we said we would come back to it, this journey versus destination thing, right? It's almost a cliche that people say that focus on the journey, not the destination, and especially for happiness, right? That it's not a destination, it's the journey. So what did you find in that research, right? And can you kind of apply it specifically to the topic of happiness or the goal of leading a happy life?
I see. It's interesting to think about that. I think for us, we talk a lot, in that paper specifically, we study what happened after success. So after we achieve something, what can we do next? And I think a lot of times what we found is that once people feel like they have achieved a goal, they reach the destination, they feel lost, and they stop the behavior that got them there. And our focus was to sustain those behaviors that we know has long-term benefit. And so what we found is that actually thinking about what you just accomplished as a journey. So for instance, after the first month, building the first habit, actually look back, just take a moment, look back, what have you learned this month? How amazing that last month was, and how amazing that now you acquire this habit is part of who you are now before you move on to the next month. That exercise is so important. We are literally trying to spend some time to appreciate what we have done and to realize how now it becomes another part of me before I move on to pursue the next thing. So that is what we call it, more of a journey mindset. You are looking back to see that continuation from who I was before when I didn't do these things to now who I am today, where I do these practice and those are good, and I'm gonna do so much more. So that's what we kind of look at in that paper. There's also a related paper before ours that look at how you can use journey mindset to look at the future. So they found that the students who think about academic success as destination or journey is actually more helpful, because as you think about things as a journey, you're actually planning it out. We're thinking about how to get there. So the process feels more clear. Instead of thinking about destination, it's exciting, but we are not really thinking through how we get there. So the journey mindset also helps with planning when you think about the future. And what we found is that it also is helpful as we reflect on our past little success. And as we talked about earlier, that really helped to build up more success along the way and hopefully more happiness along the way.
Yeah, is journey versus destination the same thing as process versus outcome?
Yeah, we try to look at that too. I think there's similarity there. I think the journey basically focuses you more on the process, and destination focuses you more on the outcome. But we believe that there's something interesting with metaphor use. So Raj kind of alluded to it earlier. We use metaphor a lot in our culture, and they usually can open up a lot of different concepts. So it's all about associations. And journey specifically can activate concepts about continuation. It could be continuing into the future or continuing from the past. We're also now looking at how journey could potentially hint that there are a lot of ups and downs, because when you think about journey, it's less linear. Now, destination sounds like I'm here, eventually I reach the destination, is linear. There's no process. But journey potentially means there's going to be up and downs. So we're also trying to look at if that could make people more resilient to setbacks, and understanding that that is part of the journey. I'm going to have some setback. I'm prepared for this, and I'm going to make progress again. So I think there's some richness in the use of language journey that potentially give it even more possibility as something that helps to drive us.
All right.
We have a good question in the audience, if I may, from Salim. Why do high achievers sometimes sabotage all their successes? Appears to be common with celebrities.
Yeah, I think a specific example of that might be that, they get into drugs or, kind of somehow sabotage some important aspect of their life, right? Health or relationships. I don't know if that's where Salim is coming from, but the celebrities that, I'm reminded of, let's say Britney Spears, right? I mean, not to kind of shine the spotlight on anyone in particular, but lots of people like that, Michael Jackson, people like that who seem to somehow sabotage their own success and well-being. Why might that be? Do you have any thoughts on that?
So one thing that comes to mind, the literature on self-handicapping. So they were saying that sometimes people may do that. And I think a lot of times it's because by doing that, they can avoid failure. So I think there's a fundamental fear of failure in those cases, because somehow we feel like failure means so much to our self-value. If I fail, this is going to be a disaster. And so one way not to fail is to make sure I don't try. And so self-handicapping could be one thing that people do so that they have another excuse for failing. I'm failing because I'm literally creating a situation I won't be able to success, not because I'm not good enough. And so this is not my research, but it's a classic social psychology finding I think could be helpful as we think through this. And of course, you may have mentioned the growth mindset is helpful here, because I think when we put too much on failure, that's what we do. We are so afraid of failure. We think it means something bad about ourselves fundamentally. And that's why we self-handicap. So we never have to try, and therefore we never fail. But growth mindset could be helpful here, which is also related to the journey mindset we talked about earlier, is that failure doesn't mean that's who you are. That's just part of the process. And you can always grow and be better, and you can improve, and you can still learn. So if we can think about failure as part of the process and not an indicator of my fundamental skills just not being good enough, I think that could really change how we think about failure and hopefully do less self-handicapping.
So one thing that I talk about, for those of you who are not familiar with this, I have a book out. It's called "If You're So Smart, Why Aren't You Happy?" And it's really targeting people who are smart and successful and high achievers who are not quite as happy. Okay, and in the book, I basically kind of cover some research on this idea that some of the very things that lead to smartness and success can often undermine your happiness and well-being. Okay, so a good example of this might be kind of the extent to which you think through things and how smart you are. I mean, almost a definition of smartness is that you're very good at thinking, very good at critical reasoning, and so on. And that then triggers a bunch of processes that almost seem like they're designed to lower your happiness. So you're going to be more aware of everything that exists out there. And we know in consumer research that is going to lower your satisfaction from any product that you choose, just because you're aware of everything else that you can't have now, right? Because you've chosen this. It also makes you more kind of quote unquote mind addicted, right? So sometimes you just got to go with the flow, not overthink things, okay? And if you're used to thinking and you've been praised for it and you've been rewarded for it and got good grades because of it, now you think that, I'm going to apply this thinking, pattern to every problem that I have, including things that are actually much better solved through relying on your gut instincts and your emotions. Okay. In the context of celebrities, and I'm interested in seeing what you guys feel about this, to this question. I feel that a lot of times these people, they end up kind of becoming more egotistical as a result of their successes. And it's partly because of how other people react to them. This is not a full-fledged study that we did, but we did a quick kind of a pilot study, if you will, where we had the same joke, right? But purportedly written by the CEO of an organization or the janitor of the organization. Okay, the same joke, and we asked them to rate it on how funny it was in a between subject design. So they didn't, they either in the janitor condition or in the CEO condition. And the same joke was found to be funnier if the purported author was the CEO. All right, it's the same joke. Okay, so what it means is, as a CEO, as a successful person, you're getting a lot more adulation. You're getting signals from the public that you're smarter, you're more intelligent, you're more this, that, and the other, and that feeds into your ego, right? Then you start assuming that you're higher than other people, you're better than other people, and all that, and that narcissism is not very good. It can lead to the kinds of things that you talked about, Suchi, where you want to avoid other people who are ahead of you because you feel like, hey, I'm supposed to be the one who's ahead, and I'm getting signals that somebody else is even more famous or even better or even more talented. I'm just going to avoid those people, right? Those kind of behaviors that are ultimately self-sabotaging. I don't know if you think that something like that might be going on as well.
Definitely, and I think if we think we're the number one, imagine the pressure that's on. Everything almost like is only downhill from here.
Yeah,
right? Everything
exactly.
you're gonna do is that you're trying to protect that. So that's what we kind of also you kind of put yourself into a prevention mindset. It's not about what next, what is the next step you can bring your company to. You're not thinking about I better not lose this status. It's all about what I can do to prevent losing this status. So we need to get powerful people. All they want is more power. It's not. It itself is not satisfying, and in order to protect power, they need more power. So I think that is just not a very healthy and productive cycle. So definitely, I think it's important not to think that you want to protect your current status and make sure everybody stays below you. There's something more to that.
Wow.
Okay, wonderful. Any other questions?
Yeah, there are a lot of questions floating in here.
All right. While you look at that, Mel, I have a question that I wanted to ask Suchi. I want to make sure I don't forget it because I also emailed everyone saying that we're going to ask this question. A lot of people are working from home right now, working from home, WFM. It even has its own abbreviation now, right? And most of the people, yesterday I gave a webinar to the people at USC, Marshall School. And I did a quick poll and I asked them, okay, are you more stressed, less stressed, equally stressed now after the outbreak of the coronavirus? And 70% said more stressed. Okay. And then I asked them, why are you more stressed? Okay. I had some 10 reasons. And one of those reasons was I feel less unproductive now. Okay. So, and that was the top reason why people felt more stressed because of this outbreak and working from home and everything. So I'm sure that is prevalent among people here too in the audience. So what advice might you have for people who are working from home on boosting their productivity?
Yeah, definitely. I think at home, and I think relatedly, Raj, you also pointed out, there are people who become more productive at home. So there's interesting cases here. Like some people become less productive, some more. And of course, there are fundamental.
Which category are you?
I think for me right now, maybe slightly more, and I can explain a little bit more why. I think there are fundamental differences here on our lifestyles. Of course, I don't have children, so there's probably less distraction when I'm working from home versus people who, when they're at home, they're with a big family, and that could, there's just so. I think the fundamental difference is usually when we are more productive at work, it's because there's a separation from home space to the workspace. We have a time and place to remind us and bring us to a different mindset. We become more productive because there's an environment there are colleagues around us. It's a lot of external factors that help us focus. So I think a key here is to how can we recreate that at home. That's the first part. So there are some tips about maybe just put on a shirt in the morning and give yourself still the same morning routine. Carve out a space that feels like a comfortable work environment, even just organizing the desk or having a scent or lighting. That's something that make it feel more like a work environment. When you walk in there, it's work. And when you leave that room, then it's family time. So carve out that space for yourself could be important. Another thing that's
I should get out of my pajamas right now.
You have to
Business
stand
on
up.
the top, party on the bottom.
Yeah, so I think that is important. And I think another thing that might be related is that we are all stuck at the same place. So even if you carve up a space, it's going to look the same. Whereas in the past, when we go to work, there are change of locations. You may go to different meeting rooms, and you may go to client's office. And so there's change of location, and there's a working research on this, is that a lot of times when we stay at the same location for too long, we get kind of exhausted. There's cognitive we get exhausted, and simply changing ourselves to a different room could help to replenish that. So, and it has nothing to do with the fact that we have to walk there, but just simply changing environment could kind of create different mental energy. So I try to do that myself too. So even though I have a small home, there are different corners. So I'm at this corner when I'm teaching, I'm a different corner when I'm writing paper, and I feel like when I feel exhausted and I don't have momentum anymore, I change to another corner where, I have another laptop station, I bring my laptop there. So that might be something to also consider, not just create space that feels like office, but maybe create different potential corners you can work at, and maybe you give a different purpose. So you are also moving around from room to room, even when you are working at home.
I love that.
I love that too. The one thing that I would add to that is that, I don't know if you'd agree with this, guys, but I think that this is also the time in which you go a little bit easy on yourself. This is tough. This is tough for many people, especially for people perhaps who have families in smaller homes, and they don't have enough alone time, and there's lots of distractions. And that's the other thing that is number 2 on the list of stressors is I feel overburdened with the amount of things that I have to take care of now. Kids are at home for us too, and we have to make breakfast, lunch, dinner, kind of entertain them, and so on and so forth. So now is not the time to bring out the whip and engage in self-flagellation and aspire to achieve the same lofty kind of standards that you might have had before this outbreak happened. And so just go easy on yourself. This period is going to be over, hopefully soon, we'll see. And then after that, you can kind of ramp up on your lofty goals again. That's one thing I would add there.
I think what Roger just brought up is important. I think we tend to have this expectation. I used to be able to be so productive, write 10 pages in 2 hours. Why can't I do it now? And we get into this self-blame. And yes, that is true. That might be what we did before, but now the situation is uncertain. So we need to take that into account. The environment is different. The family dynamic is different. The routine is different. So with all the uncertainty, we actually don't know what is the target productivity in this new environment. So we have to give ourselves room to find that new productivity. It might just be 5 pages now, 50%, but that is the optimal productivity in this environment. So it's not fair to just convert your original productivity to this new situation. We have to kind of understand that, again, goal is dynamic, right? So we need to dynamically set our goal. Now it's a different goal that is fair for the current time and current location, and that we can work hard to stick to that new goal instead of our original productivity standard.
Wonderful. Mel, your turn to ask questions. Okay, I'm going to kind of browse through the comments, and John Zakur is going crazy out here. John!
Yeah, well, I've pulled up a comment that I really like, and it's from Monica Jimenez. And she asks, how do we differentiate from goals you really want to pursue versus goals that you think you should pursue because you've been convinced by society or dictated by society?
Love it.
For example, having kids is something you need to do, or you should get married or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That is a deep philosophical question.
I know.
Maybe there are different dimensions to think through. I think the goal setting literature talks about 2 critical dimensions. One is expectancy, one is value. As we think about what goals to pursue, we kind of think about what is expectancy is basic probability. What is the likelihood actually of attaining that goal, and what is the value of attaining that goal? And both needs to be there for goals to be meaningful for your life. So for some of us, some things may sound really valuable, but it's just not doable for my circumstance, for my environment. That is not the goal I'm gonna spend a lot of my effort on, and vice versa. I mean, maybe it's doable, but it's not very valuable for me. Then that is not something I want to do either. So I think differentiating that would be important. And I think that one thing that brought up from the question is, so how do we define that value? Is it something that's a societal value or my personal value? And there's a lot of research about how intrinsic value is eventually what's going to sustain us. If we do something for extrinsic value just because someone giving me a reward, someone recognized me, those things will go away. You know, those things don't sustain our behavior. We need to derive joy and value from the goal ourselves. So I guess that's something, that deep work that we all have to do. Is this the goal I'm achieving for other people's approval, or something that fundamentally will make me happy, even if nobody likes that action and nobody knows that I did this? And I think that will basically speak to a higher real value in that goal. And then out of all those things, what is attainable right now? Those are the things I would say, start with those.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah. It's obviously, if you peel the layers of the onion though there, which is why you might have said it's a philosophical question, Suchi, is that even if you like doing something by yourself, let's say that you like sitting down and praying to God, right? Is it something that is intrinsic now, or was it something that you were kind of educated to do, right? Let's say that you were Tarzan, you didn't grow up in society, out in the jungles. Chances are very low that you'd have done that behavior. So it's not truly intrinsic in that sense, but you've been now trained or whatever to believe that this is giving you joy, and it is, okay? So that's where it gets a little complex, I think.
Definitely, and it's a continuum and it overlaps. Yeah, definitely.
All right. Okay. So any other thing that caught your eye, Mel? There's lots of people talking about happiness and courses on happiness and why isn't it as natural as inhaling and exhaling and everything, which are great questions. Okay. And I do think that some of those questions are kind of answered in the course that hopefully you've taken, the online course on happiness. Many of them, of course, including mine. So I'm going to defer you to those resources for now, and then use, how much time do we have? Oh, only about 11 minutes. Okay, guys, we have 11 minutes to ask questions for Suchi on goals. Okay, goal achievement. So if you have any questions on the topic of goal achievement, go for it. In the meanwhile, I'm going to go down the list that we have here, and let's see, I got to remove my glasses for this. Okay, so. Okay, I want to ask you about goal.
I found a question.
Oh, you have a question, Mel?
Yeah, it's a good one.
Okay, go for it.
From the audience, from CA Lunawat.
Okay.
Why do you think that we have come to an era where we have to start teaching ourselves about being happy? Was there ever a time when it was as natural as inhaling and exhaling?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Isn't that a good question? Like, we've forgotten what really matters. Like, how did we get so far away? I love that question. What do you think?
Right.
I don't know. Like, these are really great questions. I thought about the needs, a kind of hierarchy of needs, Raj. I don't know if that came to mind. Our needs used to be, very fundamental, very simple, just survival, get enough food, get shelter, and that was it. And then as we have those, now we want more. We want social connection, approval. Then we want fulfillment, whatever that means, and self-actualization. We want to fulfill our purpose in this lifetime. And I think as we go up, it becomes harder and harder to satisfy because we have more needs, we have more goals, we have more abstract ones, and we don't really even know how to go about it. Or like what Raj said about happiness, sometimes when we are there, we don't even know we are there. So I think it's we create all those burdens ourselves. And I do believe definitely fundamentally there's some joy about just returning to simple life, and just breathing itself could be very fulfilling. When I try to do that with meditation practice and yoga practice, then those are the moments where I can really shut down the social noise and then just return to really simple, I guess, it's the action of just being and living. And I do find a lot of joy in doing that, but I do find it to be a struggle in modern day to return to that. You have to kind of purposefully plan that into the life to return to the basic needs and realizing we have those. We do have a place. We do, for all of us right now, we do have internet. We do have a laptop. We can do a lot of creative things on there, and that gives us a lot of joy. We still have our breath, and that is important too. I do think that is something we have to remind ourselves of as we move up to the different levels of needs that society kind of keep on communicating on.
That is such a beautiful answer.
Yeah, that's great. One thing that I want to add to that is that it's sometimes kind of this romantic view, it's called, right? If you read Yuval Harari's book on this idea that back in the past, things used to be happier, and everybody led a happier life, and now we're kind of distracted from it, and we have to. Why did it come to the situation where it's no longer the case that happiness is natural? I don't think it ever was. If you look at Angels and Demons by the Better Angels of Our Nature by Steven Pinker as well, he argues that this is the most peaceful time that we have ever had in the evolution of the human beings. Okay, and I think this connects back to what Suchi was saying, is that back in the past, now we don't have data from the past because people didn't collect data, so we don't know how much they prioritize happiness or how natural it was and so on. And I think that people were really struggling for basic needs at that point. Happiness, it's not as if they were, I don't think it was the case that they had a greater priority on happiness. It just never occurred to them that they could think about happiness because survival was at stake, and they were after food and those kinds of basic needs. And now we have come to a point where all those are taken for granted, and so what's now occupying our consciousness is the next set of needs. It's along the lines of what you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that, sometimes we have the romantic view of the people in the past that they had it right and they, prioritize happiness and we are screwed up. I don't think that's necessarily the case. Okay.
Definitely.
So my topic was going to be, and we have about 5 minutes or 7 minutes, is on goal quitting. And there are some other questions too that Mel has been great at paying attention to. And I do want you to talk a little bit about when should we quit a goal, right? We aspire to achieve goals. We know that they're important for us, and that's good. But there comes a time for many goals where it was just not achievable, or circumstances are no longer helpful. Whatever, there's many contexts in which it's best to quit, right? Without, of course, damaging your self-esteem or your sense of self-worth, because you can easily kind of, conclude that because I quit, I'm no longer a worthy person, or I'm no longer a good person, or whatever, So how can you kind of manage that? Okay, that's a question I want to ask you. But in the meanwhile, I don't know, Mel, if you had any other question that caught your attention.
Oh, in the audience, no. I think talking about goal quitting is perfect.
All right.
I have to say that is another big question that as a research community, we are starting to look at. Now, what is failure? How do we digest that? And how do we quit? And I think a lot of things we kind of briefly touch on earlier would be helpful here. We talk about pursuing goals that are both attainable and valuable is going to be important. So when one thing loses its value, that's when we really should consider quitting. When something like Raj said becomes not possible, or when value changes, and the value does change, we need to be open-minded about it. As life moves on, as our society changes, something that was originally valuable may not be anymore. So when these two things change, that's when we can reassess and potentially quit. And another thing I think is important is what we talked about earlier about growth mindset. Quitting doesn't mean you are stopping doing everything about this. You might be finding other ways to do the similar things. So I may be quitting a sub goal, but my overall goal of happiness or peace will still be there. But I'm quitting this specific exercise because the gym is still literally closed, but I'm doing other things for that bigger goal. So also be mindful that there's a whole system of hierarchy of goals, and when you're creating something small, it is not that detrimental if you are doing other things now to get to that bigger picture. So I think the goal is rarely just in itself. I think it feels big at the moment. If I'm quitting a project, my life ends right there because that project is my life. But if you think about a bigger goal, why you're even doing the job to begin with, it might be for the feeling of success, social connection, or money, or a salary. There are other ways to get those things too, and you can take on other projects. There are other ways to get there. So I think it's about realizing how these things are connected, and maybe quitting one thing but finding other things so that we can still move towards the direction that we want to move towards.
That's good. I like that. Thinking of the abstract goal that you're trying to achieve, and going to the gym is just part of the whole plan to achieve a healthy life, perhaps, or good looks, or whatever it is that you're doing it for. And then realizing there are other things that you can do, even though you can't go to the gym right now. Maybe you can work out at home, or eat healthy, or what have you. Good, wonderful. Wow, lots of great insights, Suchi. Really love it. And I'm kind of also browsing the questions. We might have time for just a couple of them. And so one of the questions that's come up here is this kind of a broad philosophical question, I suppose, and we'd love to hear your views on this. This is from Michael or Michelle, and his question is, how can society value happiness more than economic growth? GNH, not GDP, okay?
Definitely. Big question. I think it comes down to people like all of you here today, people like Raj and Mel. I think in the past, I think we have been promoting way too much on achievement. And I just recently taught a class on culture. And when we talk about high value success, it's not always defined as achievement or material success in every culture. There are cultures that define it as relationship, as quality of life. So I think the society is realizing that there's more than one type of success, and can we gradually move to other types of success, or recognizing other types of success. It's not that we have to abandon achievement, but maybe quality of life, relationship success is a success as well. And I think our society is gradually moving towards that direction because of all of you that care about this topic. And I do think that, for one, give people more possibilities to be successful, so we fail less, right? Like, there are other ways to succeed and feel good about what we achieve. And I think society become more diverse because of it. So hopefully this is just the beginning of that process.
Right, you're from Taiwan, right, Suchi?
Yes, I'm from Taiwan.
And would you say that there it's a less materialistic, more kind of focusing on well-being metrics of success?
I think we go through phases based on my experience. I think there are phases where Taiwan was moving from like developing country to developed country. There was a lot of emphasis on different achievement and material success, and that's a reflection of your social status. But I think it has made a turn, and now people are focusing more on what does it mean to be happy. So like with the society has to get to the place where it's stable, people do have their jobs, and so what do we do next, kind of. So I think people are realizing how you use your money is important, not just about earning money. How you spend your time is important too. So I think there is definitely a quest for that.
Right. So let me add my own 2 cents on this idea, on this question. So we know from a lot of research, actually from Philip Zimbardo, who was from Stanford, right? I think he's emeritus now, or maybe even retired. But on these series of experiments that give us this term broken window theory, that the environment can have a huge influence on our behaviors. If you go into an environment in which everything is disorganized and shabby and everything, then chances are that you're going to exhibit those kinds of criminal behavior or uncivil behavior as well. And you go into another context in which everything's clean and orderly, then you're likely to behave in an orderly fashion. Okay, and I think that the way that we behave and the goals that we pursue are to a large extent determined by the environment we find ourselves in. If we feel that everyone else is going after money and the next big achievement and a bigger pool and a fancier car, that's what we see all around us, and that's what we're going to adopt as our goals, through goal contagion. On the other hand, if you see that everyone's in a social service and being nice to each other and pursuing happiness and intrinsic interest, that's what you're going to do, right? Environment has a huge, this is maybe the biggest theme to emerge from all of psychology, in my opinion, that, people aren't behaving according to their own personalities or values or attitudes. A large part of their behavior is determined by the context in which they find themselves, okay? And if that is true, then in order to kind of shift people's priorities to the happiness kind of a thing versus economy, you need environmental stimuli. I'll give you a quick example. If you have movies that talk about being good to other people, and that's what most of the movies are all about, as opposed to taking revenge and becoming famous, then that's what that society is going to pursue at some level. And so what can a government do? They can kind of subsidize those kind of movies. We used to have tax breaks on those kind of movies back in India when I was growing up, by the way, okay? Yeah. Nice. So the more, that in turn means then that the people at the top, the helm of affairs, need to kind of, because they have the control over the resources, they have control over the environment through their policies and so on. If they top down push an agenda of happiness, then most people are going to adopt it. If they don't, then it's going to be the opposite. That's my 2 cents on that. I don't know if you guys agree, have any thoughts, etc. We have maybe a minute, okay?
I love that, actually. And I think based on my understanding, a lot of the audience today used to be Raj's students. So I assume you were at business school or are at business school right now. And as I talk to my students, I kind of always think that these are the future leaders or current leaders of society. And every time we do a campaign for a product or something, we're putting a message out there. So together we are shaping that cultural narrative too. So as leaders, you have choices on what kind of message you put out there. Like, what do you think your product brings to people? And if we are all mindful about the influence of that and the power of that, we could actually project stories that we actually want people to now pursue, such as happiness or peacefulness, and think about individual values instead of thinking about what the society wants to impose on, instead of putting on yet another message that sells the same thing that we have already realized that we are suffering from together collectively. So,
all right, guys, this is coming from Stanford University professor, okay? Creme de la creme. All right, thank you very much, Suchi. Really appreciate it. Mel, as usual, Namaste to
Thank
you.
you. I
Thank you
learned
so much,
so much.
everybody.
This was such a wonderful conversation.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody, for tuning in. Really, really appreciate it for joining us for the third session of Happy Smarts Happy Hour. And the next week, we're going to have Professor Sri Kumar Rao, that some of you guys might recognize from taking both my courses, online courses. He was there on both as a guest speaker. All right. So, adios. Be well.
Yes.
Stay healthy.
Stay healthy. Stay happy.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.